So if you're told you're almost there, you just need a push, you're going to look at your world, you're going to look at yourself, you're going to look at God through that prism. Because unless you have the bad news, the good news is just like adding it on to other good news. The Braves won, great, add it on. Jesus came to save my soul, wonderful. No, you are a wretched person who is dying and going to hell, and you need the salvation of Jesus Christ. We cannot fully understand the letters to the churches in Revelation unless we understand the book of Genesis first. Why? Because Genesis introduces us to everything that we are about to deal with in the next 65 books of the Bible. It lays out the path for everything, and it answers many of our deepest questions. I would even argue that if you have a broken or a poor view of Genesis, then you may very well have a broken, poor theology. And it is that foundation, the foundation upon which we build your right understanding of who God is, who man is, what effect the fall of man has on creation, on the world around us, and what is the purpose and what is the role of redemption within all of this. I remember when I was in Indonesia, and we had a taxi driver who was driving us between locations, and I felt inclined that I would share the gospel with this taxi driver. And so we began to talk, and his English was not great, and my Indonesian was, thank you, how much? Can you cook this a bit more? I want to live. But I tried. And my assumption was that I would use a key word like Jesus, or Isa as they call him. And he would say, oh, Jesus, Isa, yes, of course. And then he would tell me what he thinks, and I would say, oh, no, actually, and then correct things. That is not what happened. I said, Jesus, Isa? And he's like, nope. God? Bible? Christian? Nothing? Nothing here? Nothing. And I realized at that point that I needed to start in Genesis because he had no framework for which to understand who Jesus was. I needed to start with, in the beginning, God. I needed to explain the character of God. I needed to explain the condition of man. And I was so overwhelmed because my assumption is that this would be easy, and all of a sudden it was massively difficult. And so I was struggling and panicking, and I'm starting to tell him about Adam and Eve, and then he was like, oh, we're here. I was like, wow, that was the most incomplete gospel possible. I don't think you understood any of that. And so my prayer is that someone will come and speak in his native tongue and tell him the gospel, and he'll go, oh, that's what the crazy American was trying to tell me. But this is our reality. We cannot understand the work of the Lord Jesus Christ apart from understanding creation and fall. Again, this is why it's so confusing why pastors and theologians think that you can dichotomize, you can separate Old and New Testament, because there's so much, the gospel is pouring out of Genesis. But you have to have an eye to see it. And it gives you the framework for which to understand and read the New Testament. And if you think about history, think about the history of the Christian church, through the years, so many have held to this anemic view of the fall of man. And therefore, an anemic view of the grace and the love and the mercy of God. Because man is very good at thinking more highly of himself than he ought. If I am only a small distance from God, then I just need a little boost. I only need a little help. Okay? That's one picture. The other picture is there's an infinite chasm between myself and a holy, righteous, perfect God. And I am completely and utterly and totally dependent on Him for all things. Those are two completely different narratives. So if you're told you're almost there, you just need a push, you're going to look at your world, you're going to look at yourself, you're going to look at God through that prism. But if you see the infinite chasm between you and Him, and then hear the good news, that's going to be a completely different story. This is the thing. People think, well, just go out and share the gospel and tell people the good news. Well, okay, yes, true. But you can't have good news unless you have bad news. People need to understand what the chasm looks like. They need to see the gap between themselves. This is what Jesus does with Nicodemus. And you're a teacher of the law, and you don't even know what it means to be born again. Because unless you have the bad news, the good news is just like adding it on to other good news. The Braves won, great. Add it on. Jesus came to save my soul, wonderful. No, you are a wretched person who is dying and going to hell, and you need the salvation of Jesus Christ.